The Sopranos follows the life of New Jersey mafia boss Tony Soprano and the people around him. Tony's evolution over the course of the show, or lack thereof, is documented through his therapy sessions with Dr. Melfi. A recurring theme of The Sopranos is aged gangsters coming out of prison after doing lengthy stretches not a peep, and being at loggerheads with Tony once they're out due to their old and narrow-minded ways. In Season 5, we have something a little different. The release of that animal Tony Blundetto, Tony Soprano's cousin. Tony B did 16 years in the can after a hijacking. Tony Soprano was supposed to go with him but didn't make it after suffering a panic attack, something he keeps to himself, instead telling others he was jumped by some unidentified black males. The guilt eats away at Tony Uncle Johnny, who believes Tony Uncle Al holds ill will to him, and as such, he tries to make up to him, but Tony B doesn't want a life in the mob anymore, opting for the life of a civilian. But due to a combination of factors, that animal is sucked back into the world of the mob, carrying out a hit against Joey Peeps, for example, for Angelo Garepe and his faction of the Lupertazzi family. Angelo and Tony were close in prison, and when the former is killed by Phil Leotardo and his 47-year-old kid brother Billy under the orders of Johnny Sack, Tony B goes off the reservation, kills Billy and tries to kill Phil but fails, and then splits. This puts Mr. Taipei personality in an incredibly difficult position. Blundetto killed a Lupertazzi soldier and shot at a made man. He can't be part of this social club anymore. In fact, he's gotta go! Things are complicated though when New York make it clear that Tony B will be tortured and it won't be a quick, clean death. But Blundetto is Tony's cousin. He's disappointed him, but how can he give up his blood for slaughter? And what does it show to his own crew if he bends the knee to New York and starts giving up his own men to another family? As he says, I give him up, we can give the whole fucking thing up. There is Tony's own ego and face at stake here, but also his safety. Because when Tony B is in hiding, Phil Leotardo goes on rampage in Gangland, Jersey, attacking Sopranos crew members. They fear for their safety, as Ray Curto's birthday dinner shows, and want what's supposed to be done immediately, with some members directly calling Tony out for his hypocrisy and nepotism.
Thank you. That was great.
There's a hint of mutiny, and for sure, hardcore, insatiable, and potentially violent dysentery in the ranks. This scenario is one of the most difficult Tony has had to face in this show. How does he emerge unscathed? Who does he placate to? How does he make everyone happy? Well, eventually, Tony makes the decision to take out Tony B himself, which he does so. He then informs New York where Tony B is and awaits the furious phone call from Johnny Sack, who tells him it solved nothing. The two meet, and after some dialogue, they come to an agreement to keep Phil at bay. But was this the correct decision? What exactly was the best way for Tony to have dealt with the Blundetto situation? Well, let's discuss. Of course, we can be here all day discussing different decisions Tony could have made ever since Blundetto was released from prison. I mean, after all, in some ways the entire affair was Tony's making, who suggested to Angelo a power-sharing arrangement between Johnny Sack and Little Carmine after Carmine Lupertazzi's death. Tony told Sack it was Angelo's idea, which leads him to put out a hit on Angelo, which is why Tony B hit the Leotardo brothers. But anyway, what we're here to talk about is after Tony B carries out the Billy Leotardo hit, what should Tony have done? I mean, it's easy for us to sit here in our chit-chat room and say Tony should have given him up. What Tony B did was punishable by death, no questions asked. And it wasn't his only screw-up. Sack would have wanted him dead before this if he was able to prove Blundetto killed Joey Peeps. But we have to consider the human element. Tony loves his cousin, and there was a lot of bonding between the two after B got out of the can. There wasn't even enough space for camel nose in this relationship, and it's fueled by Tony's guilt. Although saying that, when it comes to Tony's narcissism, he wants to make himself feel better, more than actually help his cousin. As always, it's about him and his feelings. Tony would have known as soon as Chrissy told him the score that Blundetto would have to die. And he may have been a hypocrite in that he'd very easily give up another Sopranos member who wasn't a blood relative, just as he didn't kill Chris on numerous occasions when he should have done. But the main sticking point is the torture. That is probably the primary thing that holds Tony back from giving up his cousin. And let's be honest, he's got a right to that. Where does it say in mob rules that Blundetto has to be tortured? If Sachs said he'd go quick and clean, maybe Tony would give him up. But why should he allow New York to torture his cousin before they kill him? Especially since it's now public knowledge and his own crew would know he willingly gave up an underling to another family for torture. It's worth noting that for a period of time, Tony genuinely didn't know where his cousin was. But even after he did know, he delayed with his decision making. Hiding his cousin puts pressure on his crew. At the same time, giving him up looks bad for his crew. The decision he eventually took was well received by his family and he gained respect for it, as shown when he walks into the Bing and the crew is all solemn, bringing him coffee and food. It's their way of saying you made the right decision and we feel for you. If Tony decided to say fuck it and ignore New York, as he at one point implies,
go fuck yourself, you and Phil and whoever. My fucking cousin.
The Sopranos were a much smaller family than New York, a glorified crew if you will, and they would have been squashed if they went to war against a fully healthy Johnny Sack. During the war, an underling might have gotten brave and quietly killed Tony or given him up to New York to stop the war and bloodshed so normal business can be resumed. All over what was a case of Tony's deranged cousin going haywire and everyone else paying the price. But at the same time, giving him up would make Tony look weak and essentially declare that Johnny Sack is a higher power and an authority over him. Some might say Tony should have phoned the animal and tell him to flee, but this wouldn't work. Phil would then go after Christopher. One possibility I think is plausible is he gives New York Blundetto's location, but then he gives Tony B the tip, informing him that they're coming for him. And after that, whatever happens, happens. Blundetto dies, he kills Phil, he escapes, whatever. Tony did his part. Maybe even send backup for Tony B to ensure Phil is killed. Wouldn't be too difficult. Phil turned up to the house with his headlights on and with a walking stick. He could have easily been gunned down.
Take it easy. We're not making a Western here.
And if Phil is out of the equation, Tony can begin talking to the more diplomatic Johnny Sack. But even this wouldn't work. If Tony B survived the shootout, he'd still have to go. Plus, if he took out Phil, it would be a major embarrassment for Johnny Sack, who would definitely respond. He'd probably want even more Sopranos members dead, leading to a war. Perhaps in this scenario, Tony would be able to rally Rusty and Little Carmine for them to restart a claim for the Lupatazzi crown. But now we're in pure speculation territory.
Always with the scenarios.
Ultimately, it doesn't matter what game Tony would try to play. It isn't like the Joey Peep situation where Sack wasn't sure if Tony B was involved or not. Now he was going to go no matter what happened. Tony had no cards to play. John wouldn't care if Tony B took out Phil all on his own or with prior knowledge. Tony and Jersey would get blamed for it. The entire situation is technically Tony's responsibility. Perhaps Tony would try to placate Johnny by offering him a huge percentage of the Bloomfield operation or something, but this would of course irritate his crew, who would see the money drained from their own pockets. Could Tony have gotten someone to whack Phil while the Shah was on rampage with his secret police? Maybe make it look like an accident, like he slipped on a shine box or something. I don't know. Sure, the unstable Phil would be out of the picture, but Johnny Sack would not be able to let such an embarrassment go without a response. Perhaps Tony could have tried to go back to Johnny Sack to discuss the torture aspect, which was the main point of contention. To be fair, he did try to discuss it, but as we saw, the matter was eventually settled when Tony basically offered Johnny Sack money. So maybe he should have offered Sack an envelope the size of Johnny Sack's mole and say, "You can have my cousin, but no torture." Tony could have argued the torture point. It was over the top. Phil had no real right to want it aside from the fact that Johnny Sack wanted to keep him happy. So in theory, the torture could have been dropped and Tony could have then given his cousin up. But of course, there's no telling if New York would honour the deal. They'd probably torture him anyway and display the body publicly to make a statement and embarrass the Sopranos crew. Think too Vito Spatafori and his fat ass with the pool cues sticking out of it. What Tony eventually did, taking the man out himself, waiting for Sack and his fire, and then negotiating, was in actual fact probably the best thing he could have done. This saga is sometimes pointed to as being proof of him being a bad boss. There's many examples of Tony being a bad boss, but really, this isn't one of them. It was a bad situation, and this was him steering the ship best he could. Tony B had to go. Tony Soprano took it personally upon himself, which saved his cousin from torture and also raised the respect with his crew. He didn't bow down to New York, and he later used his diplomacy skills with Johnny Sack to conclude the issue. Of course, no one could have foreseen the raid at Sack's home. Tony's only real error in this ordeal since the shooting was how much he delayed the decision, which caused all sorts of pressure. If there is some improvement that Tony could have made, it would be finding the man as soon as he could and going down there and taking out Blundetto quickly, before New York had time to make a proper beef of it. He'd tell John and Phil he's already taken care of it in-house, it's done, here's some cash, let's get back to business. By taking care of it sooner, and not hiding Tony B for all that time, a lot of other things could have been avoided, and Tony would not have lost the respect and loyalty from his own people, and there wouldn't be as much trouble with New York as there eventually was. Sure, Phil would still not be thrilled, but they would meet his price, so perhaps Tony should have gone down the "leave it with me, it's my family, as soon as he's found, I'll handle it" route. So what do you think? Could Tony have handled the Tony B situation better, or did he do the best he could in a bad situation? Let me know in the comments section below, and thanks for watching.